Loss. It is inevitable in our lives. How do we move on? How do we pick up the pieces? Where does the strength come from? You are listening to the Ideas in Motion podcast, and today's episode is about life after loss. Today, I have a very special guest on my podcast. Cherie McEntire is a friend from way back. She's a mom, a grandma, and a hockey player, so much more. And today she's pulling back the curtain on her life journey and sharing her story of life after loss. Cherie was actually one of the first people that was kind to me when I moved to Prince George in fourth grade. So we were talking a little bit about this pre-show, but let's refresh the audience. Like, how did we meet? It was fourth grade.
Yeah, I don't exactly remember. I just remember your beautiful smile and thinking, I need to be this girl's friend.
Yes. And you were. I remember everything that I remember about you. I mean, it's going back to grade 4, so we don't need to tell everybody how long ago that was. But I remember those beautiful curls, your beautiful red curls, and your great big smile. And
Oh,
I always knew you were a safe space, and so thank you for that. I'm really
well, you're
excited.
welcome.
It's been nice to catch up with you.
Yes, I'm
Yeah.
so excited just to see you.
Yeah. And so, can you remind me, like, did you play sports in school?
I did not play sports in school. My parents were very busy and they just didn't really have a lot of time. I think my brother and I played a couple of years of t-ball
Okay.
or slow pitch.
Yes.
But other than that, I wasn't really sporty when I was in school. I think I just didn't know where I fit. And so I didn't really fit anywhere. And that's just kind of how school was for me. And I know it was for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But I read a lot and you know, I discovered boys way too early.
Who was your favorite author?
Oh, my favorite author. Back in the day, it was always Judy Blume. I think I
Me
read
too.
every single thing she ever wrote. Like I just love her. And I can't wait till my granddaughter is old enough that I can start buying her those books.
Yes, yes. Actually, I remember spending copious amounts of time in my room, locked in, and I'd be reading Blubber over and
Oh
over
yeah.
and over again. And Are You There, God? It's Me,
Yeah.
Margaret,
That was
over and
my
over again.
favorite. Are you there,
They
God?
were my best friends, and I was in bowling. I think it was grade 5 I started bowling, and I'd
Mhm.
have to sell these chocolate-covered almonds, and so I'd have them stashed under the bed, and I was also babysitting, so I would like, "Okay, I'm gonna buy another box of chocolate almonds and Judy Blue." Yeah. Thank goodness for good authors.
Yeah, exactly.
So I went recently on your Instagram and I've been following you. We reconnected about what, a decade ago,
Something like that.
15 years ago. And you just recently played at Hockey Helps the Homeless tournament in Newmarket. And
I did.
you're a hockey player. You're pretty much a famous hockey player.
Yes.
Can you tell me a little about when you got started in hockey?
I wouldn't say I'm famous, but my husband used to say, Shri, you're a hockey slut. You'll play for anyone. When my son started playing hockey, actually, is the same year I started playing. So I think I was 28 when I first put on hockey skates. My daughter had signed up when she was 7, and it looked like a lot of fun. And I heard in my little hometown of Burns Lake, BC, that they had a women's hockey team, and I was anxious to start. So my son was 6 and I was 28, and we started hockey the same year. So, and I just haven't looked back. I love it. I am not very good at it, but I love it.
Well, like, I've seen bruises in photos. I've seen you in tournaments, great big smiles in the locker room. This is a wonderful community, and it's something that you had to, from what I understand, you had a very hard time getting back on the ice? There was a time to is,
Well, I was actually quite fortunate because, again, I have the red hair. I'm very stubborn and I'm very independent. And I had, I guess this is as good a time as any to talk about my situation. So in 2010, I was actually on my way home from a hockey tournament, ironically.
Yeah.
My husband was driving, my 15-year-old son was in the back seat, and a beautiful April day. And we were cresting a hill, and a driver coming the other way had fallen asleep at the wheel.
Uh,
And we crested at the same time, and he hit us head on. My husband was killed instantly on impact, and I was very, very badly injured, and my son in the back seat was quite injured as well. Um, I almost tore off my left foot. My left femur was broken. My left ulna was broken. My back was broken. My neck was broken in two places. I had a brain injury, and the seatbelt tore up my intestine. So I was in really, really bad shape. My son, who was sitting behind my husband, he separated his pelvis, dislocated his sternum, and broke 6 ribs on one side. So all seatbelt injuries.
mhm.
But yeah, so yeah, I don't remember the accident. I woke up a week and a half later in Vancouver Hospital.
Wow.
So, and my daughter, due to the brain injury, and I think due to the drugs that I was on, my daughter was determined she was going to tell me what had happened to my husband. And I believe she had to tell me 4 times before it kind of stuck. Because if you know anything about brain injury, um, short term memory, that's where I had the biggest issue, like due to that, the impact. It was short term memory. So, the poor thing, she's 19 years old and she has to tell her mom continually that her dad has passed away. So that was tough.
So I can't even imagine. I'm sitting here across from you, and you're vibrant. You're beautiful. You're happy. And that's what we see today, but obviously there was some incredible physical and emotional things that you had to overcome. So can you kind of take us back, take the audience back to those places, and for example, what's the right thing to say? I'm sure people come in and they want to give their condolences. Really, we don't know what to say. I wouldn't know what to say.
Yeah, there really isn't a right thing to say. I think as coming from my side of things, there's a few things I didn't like hearing. I didn't like hearing, well, he's in a better place. That was no good to me because I was 37, my kids were young still. There was no better place.
Mhm.
So that was a comment I really, really struggled with. Um, and everything happens for a reason. You could still not tell me today what the reason was. Like those were the 2 phrases that people were trying to be so kind and so comforting. And yeah, those were not things I wanted or needed to hear in that moment. However, I did explain to my children because I was in hospital or in Vancouver for a few months following the accident. I did tell them when we go back home, a few things are going to happen. People are going to see you. They're going to run up to you. They're going to hug you. And they're going to cry all over you. There
Mhm.
are other people that are going to see you, turn white, and turn away because they don't know what to say to you. And I need you to know that both those things come from a place of love.
Oh,
And
what
so just remember that no matter what reaction people give you, or even when they say things that hurt you or don't feel right to you, that all of those things are coming from a place of love. And that's probably the best advice I could have given my kids when we came out of that.
That is how did you know to give that advice? Like,
I always say I hit my head really hard and it shook some stuff out because I'm not usually that kind of person. But for whatever reason, it just, as I was having some quiet moments with my kids and we're getting ready to go back home and to see people again, I just felt it was really important that they not be more traumatized by the things that may happen when we get home. They've
yeah,
been through so much already. And even like the fact that I survived, there was a time they didn't know if that was going to happen.
yes.
They didn't know if they were going to lose us both that day. So,
Mhm, mhm. And then what happened? Like, how was life in recovery? How long did it take you to, um, heal from your injuries? And tell us a little bit about that.
well, I, s- the last surgery I'd had regarding my accident was in 2019. So
Wow.
the accident was in 2010 and I was still having surgeries in 2019. So it's been a really, really long process. Um, I was in Vancouver from the time they got me stabilized and they flew me out of Vanderhoof to Vancouver. I was in Vancouver till from I think the 8th or 9th of April until the 3rd of July.
Mhm.
And during that time, I was only in the hospital till the end of April. And then I was in an apartment where I was close to the hospital so I could do rehab every day. I believe it was twice a day. The first year is still kind of fuzzy for me because I was
Yeah,
still
I bet.
heavily burn injured. Um, but I was home fairly quickly. But I do remember saying to the physiotherapist when I was in Vancouver, I said, "All right, hockey starts in September.
Mhm.
We got to pick this up." And he's like, "Oh, Cherie, you're not playing hockey this September." And I said, "Well, we'll see. We'll see." And, a couple of weeks go by and I said, "Look, I'm frustrated. This is not going fast enough. I've told you
Mhm.
hockey starts in September and I'm still on crutches." Now, again, I've had some fairly extensive injuries, and I'm very very sweet.
Yeah.
I've told you. He said, "Not this year. Next year, you'll play hockey." And I just looked in my eye, said, "You are not the boss of me."
Mhm.
And I got home. I got a rehab lady set up who happens to be one of my close friends. And she helped me with my rehab every day. And when our team started in September on the ice, I started on the ice in that September. It was not pretty. I had zero muscles on my body. I was very shaky, but I didn't miss a practice. I was back on the ice. The accident was the 4th of April, and I was back on the ice in the middle of September.
Tell me about that first moment back on the ice.
Oof. Well, there was a couple of things because my husband was a big hockey supporter in our area. So that's actually where we held the memorial
Oh,
was at the hockey rink. And it just seemed so perfect and so fitting, and it was amazing, and it was huge, so it was able to hold all the people that wanted to come, and it was lovely. But when I started hockey, of course, again, I was brain injured and things don't kinda click in.
mhm.
I was excited and gung ho, and I was the first one out on the bench to wait for practice to start, and I looked around and went, "Wow, the last time I was here was Dave's service."
Yeah.
And
But
I
yeah.
cried and I cried and I cried, and I was so glad I was the first one out on the bench
Yeah.
because I
Yeah.
could have that moment to myself. And it just never occurred to me that I would have that emotional moment, right?
Mm.
And then I got my hold of myself. The other ladies started coming out, and I'm like, okay, oh, I'm excited. Let's do this. And I put my foot on the ice and I put my other foot down and I pushed off to go, but my body was remembering what it was supposed to do, but I had no muscles and I almost fell right on my face the very first step on the ice. And then I was like, "Oh no." And then I was leaning on my stick and I was just like a little 5-year-old out there, a little deer just trying to get myself going. But it was exciting and scary. but it was so necessary. And I've said this time and time again, the hockey ladies were my family.
Yeah.
And, when you're a mom and you're busy and you're a wife, when you have something like that in your life that you're just Cherie, you're not, Dave's wife and you're not Barb's mom and you're not, whoever you are at work that day, you're just Cherie. And so that was so important for me to get that back and to have that support of those women. And man, they supported me hard. Yeah, it was great, and I couldn't be more grateful for those women in my life, and hockey has now brought me my new fella. That's where I met my current boyfriend, was actually playing hockey in Scotland.
In Scotland.
Yes, I joined a world traveling hockey team, and I've been to Iceland, Sweden, Denmark, Prague, Australia, Scotland, and then this year he and I went together to the Newfoundland trip. So, yeah, when I was in Scotland, it was my 5th trip, I think, and it was his first, and we met there, and yeah, the rest is history, we'll say. So,
Wow. And so you've been together with him since
we met in 2018, and
20.
I moved out here to Ontario in 2019.
That's right. You're in Ontario now. From
Yeah.
BC to Ontario. And there's so many different layers in there. Like number one, the incredible resilience, and you call it stubborn. It's to not take no for an answer, to say, I'm a hockey player. This is what I do. Um, but also having that knowledge to know how to prepare your children, how other people are going to approach them. Is this something that you had experienced before? You said you had had a shake, but what do you do for your work, or what have you worked in? Are you in,
I run a home daycare for 15 years.
oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah, when my kids were little, which is perfect because then I
Yeah,
could spend with my kids as well.
yeah,
Uh, and it's crazy to see those little ones that I looked after to grow up and graduate from high school. That's been crazy. And then I worked in a furniture store for a little while, and then I worked at a bank for a little while, and that's where I was working when we had the accident. So
yeah. So you definitely have that, people knowledge, and
yeah,
even right down to the little ones, and I think that is a, you know, for for lack of a better term, and I think it is a good term, it's a superhuman skill to be able to know that and prepare. And I just think that that's beautiful. So in that decade, what is life after loss like? Like what are the some of the things that you experience? How do you get up in the morning and say,
yeah.
you know,
That was hard at first. Like that was the hardest thing. I coming home and I hadn't been to our home since the accident and coming home the first time. Um that was tough and walking into our bedroom and seeing our unmade bed because we were in a hurry to leave for the hockey tournament. Um that was that was really 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 hard. I actually, and this is kind of disgusting, but I know there's probably, other widows out there that could relate to it, but I couldn't change the sheet.
mhm,
Uh I just couldn't do it. Cuz it still smelled like Dave.
yeah,
And every time I thought, okay, it's been some time now. You've got to change the sheet. I would just cry and cry and cry and cry and I went, okay, not today then.
mm,
And I gave myself that grace. And, at this point, I couldn't even tell you how long it was before I could finally do it. But I just went, okay, today I'm going to change the sheets. And today I could. And
mhm,
so I think a big part of it is giving yourself grace to feel how you're going to feel
yeah,
because you don't know. And everybody's different. A friend of mine lost her husband not long after I lost mine. And And she felt so guilty for not approaching me. She was of the kind, I didn't know what to say, so I didn't say anything. And when her husband passed away, I went out to her place right away, and she said, I just feel awful. Here you are. And I didn't do that. And I just said to her, dude, we all grieve differently. And I don't hold anything against you. We all do things in the way that makes us more comfortable. And I
Right.
I think I do. I think if we have to give ourselves some grace. Um, the first few months were quite difficult. My daughter was away at university. My son was still at home with me. But I, I would go to bed crying every night because I missed Dave and I just missed having him there. And I'm not gonna lie, there were some really, really dark times where the bottle of pain medication was looking pretty tasty, and it would have been a lot easier if I'd have just died that day and then I'd be with him, and I wouldn't have to live without him, and I wouldn't have to live with this hole in my heart. But I knew my kids had been through enough.
Mhm.
And I just no matter how badly I wanted that relief, I just knew I could not do that to my children.
Yeah, yeah, and so your kids were a large portion of your recovery and your hockey
Absolutely.
community,
Yeah.
and so what I'm hearing is that, you know, with the hockey community especially, it's like as far as, a well-rounded life, you had already adopted something that you loved outside of everything else,
Mhm.
right? And so that was there to catch you when you most needed it,
Abs
and so on this podcast, I always try to, um, encourage people to be proactive with their life, because a lot of times we react to what happens, and it's a lot easier if we have those fundamentals in place, like, "Okay, what am I gonna do for my mindset?" That could be, prayer, it could be, just always continuing to learn self-awareness, and what am I gonna do for my body? How am I gonna keep
Yeah.
it energetic and fueled well, not necessarily skinny,
Well
right? Like,
well,
just
for
like
me, the exercise not
yeah,
only did it help with me mentally, because was having to do physio all the time, was I knew that if I didn't do it, then all the other things that I wanted to do in my life, I just simply wouldn't be able to do.
that's right, because
And
that is the 3rd layer, is
yeah,
purpose. What am
yeah.
I doing that's purposeful, that's giving something to the world?
Mhm.
Right? And those are the 3 active layers that make us an ecosystem. And
Mhm.
that's my belief, and you're here right in front of me, an absolute, um, image of that and of resilience and strength and so much more, and we look at present time, and, now you are with a new man, and you met Dave when you were young in high school?
I met Dave when I was just before I turned 19,
Yeah,
actually.
yeah.
I had moved from Prince George, to Burns Lake, and I
I
had
remember
been
that.
there a couple of months, and that's when I met Dave. So
Yeah. And so then now you're with, you have found love again and you've moved now to Ontario. So tell me about, this newer person in your life. I guess it's been a few years now.
well, what's so great is we both, because we're both older. He's a few years older than I am. We have a past, and we accept that about each other. And I couldn't be with anyone who didn't understand how much of my life Dave still is and is every day, and he's still a part of the kids' life. My grandkids know Dave
Yeah.
because my kids talk about him all the time. My granddaughter, oh my gosh, she keeps talking about who she wants to come to her birthday party, and she keeps talking about how Papa Dave needs to come too.
Oh,
And that's because he's so present in their lives, because he's still alive, because they still talk about him, which I think is so incredible. So, and my new fella, he's very, very much supportive of me talking. I've got pictures of Dave in the house,
Mhm.
um, and we just talk about him because he is a part of my past.
Yes.
And, he's a part of who I am and the person that he fell in love with. So, and he's been just so great about that. So,
Yeah, and I think that was another question I was going to ask you actually, is if you still talk to Dave. Like if you I know
I
with
I don't actually talk to him as much as I used to. I actually used
yeah.
to write letters to him.
Oh, okay.
I had a journal, and that's when I felt I needed to say something to him, whether I was angry at him, whether, it was Barbara graduated from university or, something happened in my life. Things I just wanted to tell him, I'd write my Dear Dave letters. So, um, but I haven't done that for a long time now. And I think it's more just because I don't feel I don't feel that pull anymore.
Right.
He's still here, he's still with us, but it's it's changed, and it's changed for the better because I'm not um living in that anymore.
Mm. Mhm. And I know it's not the same. I know it's not the same losing a parent as it is losing a spouse. But I remember, like, running when I was running, that would be when I was doing half marathons and marathons, was out there on the road where I would talk to my dad. And so and now, it's been 16 years. I very rarely talk to him, but I do go out for a run even though I'm not a runner anymore on his birthday.
Oh, yeah.
Because I feel like I guess because the brain turns off just enough when you feel like you're, like, pounding pavement down the road and you're about to die
Yeah.
of, like, exhaustion. The brain is shut off, so it allows that window to open up and talk to dad, and, so it just feels kinda like it's something that I always do on his birthday, and, special occasions and whatnot, or Uh, sometimes I'll just catch myself, but not nearly as often as,
Yeah.
you know, as I did before I healed. Like I always
Yeah.
felt guilt
Yeah.
for not calling him one last time. I was supposed to call him before I left and I put it off.
Yeah.
And so once I forgave myself for that guilt, which took years,
Oh, yeah.
I I was able to like, I don't feel the need and the pressure anymore, so I can kinda relate, and I know it's not the same person.
But loss is loss,
Yeah,
right?
it's true.
And yeah, I went to some great counseling afterwards, and it made a huge difference. But I distinctly remember going in one day and just being a total wreck. And I said to the lady, I've been doing everything I can to try and say goodbye to him, and I can't. I don't know how to do it. I don't know what to do. I never got the opportunity. And she said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, you know what they say, you have to let go, you have to say goodbye, you have to take these steps and do these things." And she said, "Why?"
Mhm.
I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "If you don't want to say goodbye to Dave, why do you think you have to?" And I was like even now saying that again, I get goosebumps because I thought, you
Yeah.
know what? I don't have to. And that freed me in such a way because I didn't want to, and I wasn't ready, and that wasn't a thing I ever wanted to do. So I've never said goodbye to them.
Yeah.
And I think because for me that's so final, and his life isn't over yet. Like
Mhm.
he is still so alive in things I do and things our children do and things our grandchildren do. My grandson's named after him. We have
Yeah.
lots of Daves in our life. So um it's yeah. So, but that was a really big aha moment for me. That was probably one of the best moments. Like I had lots of breakthroughs in counseling and stuff, but that was one of the biggest ones for me was knowing that just because society says that this is the way things should be done doesn't mean it's right for you.
Yeah.
And and so yeah, I've never said goodbye to Dave, and I don't plan to. I plan to say hello again one day.
That is so beautiful. That right there is so gold. lessons to live by. And the fact that, you have so much to give the world, just who you are and what you've just shared with us. It's incredible, and you give me goosebumps.
Oh,
And lucky me, I get to connect again with you this way. Um, I have one more question here before we close the show. After everything you've experienced, if you could go back to your 18-year-old self with one piece of advice, what would it be?
I think I'd have to say live in grace. Give people grace. Give yourself grace. Don't get so caught up in the little things that just don't matter. I know it's so cliche, but it's so true. Like I remember Dave used to always love to hug me or touch me or kiss me or whatever when I'm up to my elbows in soapy dishes or I'm cleaning the toilet or I'm bent over doing the tub. And that's when he wanted a hug. And I'm just like, oh, would you just go away? And I saw someone on TV and they said it's because they appreciate you so much in that moment for what you're doing.
Mhm.
So when he would do that, I would just kind of go, okay. And I would just let him hug me. And yeah, I love you too. And, and then he could go away and then I could finish what I'm doing. And so I wish I'd done that more. And I wish I'd done that for more things. But it's that grace of just, yeah, give yourself and give the people around you more grace.
I love that. That is such a word, and allow yourself that love, like, just to
Yeah,
stop and just to receive it. Yeah.
absolutely.
So actually I have one. Who's your favorite hockey team?
Well, I am a huge supporter of the Washington Capitals because my boyfriend happens to play on it. I don't know if you've heard of him. His name is Alex Ovechkin, and he's fabulous. He is my hockey boyfriend. He has been for a long time. The reason it hasn't gotten any more than that is just because he hasn't met me. That's all.
That's well, and that it'd be a given then, and that would just be that's a whole other podcast, like it's a whole other topic there.
And I don't know if you know, but he just scored 800 goals the other day. So it was very,
I didn't. My cousin, second cousin is Raymond Bork of Boston Bruins. And,
oh,
so, I mean, obviously he's not playing anymore, I don't
yeah.
think. And he's a second cousin, so he's kind of removed, but I still, when I was a kid, it was like Boston Bruins all the way. And then it was like my son's hockey team is my favorite hockey team. And now it's like, what? Hockey? And I look at you and I'm like, that brave girl, she's out on the ice getting beat around. I can't even stand up on skates. You're standing up, balancing with a stick and shooting things at people and not. I find that legendary. And know that you're doing that after everything that you've shared with us. You truly are a gift to me, to have me in my life, a true inspiration for me, and also to all the listeners.
Well, I hope that I've answered all your questions, and I hope that anyone who's listening can get something out of what I've said, or get a little bit of comfort or some clarity.
Yeah, it's a big gift when you can share your story so courageously and openly and be so candid. So for that, thank you so much. And if you want to follow the adventures of Cherie, she is on Instagram. I'll put her Instagram in the show notes here. Instagram.com /Granny Mac 3. Now, tell me a little bit about that. Granny Mac 3. Is that because you have?
Well, McEntire is the last name.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
I was a granny, and my hockey number's 3.
I love it. I love it. So that link will be in the show notes if you want to connect with Cherie and, give her, lots of likes on her posts because you're truly a superstar in our eyes. And thank you so much for being here.
Well, thanks, Karen. It's been so great to connect with you again.
Absolutely.